Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 10,000 Heroes. I'm your host, Ankur Shah Delight. This is episode 103. Welcome back to the 10,000 Heroes Club. Remember the rules. If you're listening to this right now, you're in the club. If you're not, you're kicked out of the club. No exceptions until the next time you listen. It really is that simple. Today, I want to address the question, how do I find my purpose? This is a podcast about purpose. It's a community of purpose. It only seems appropriate that we come back and touch this one from a few different angles. I think it's a really great question because it's relevant to everybody and it's constantly changing. It's not going to be the same question or the same answer for anybody or even for any single person at any different point in time. It's just always evolving. And not only that, in addition to its relevance and individual answering for every single person, it's also a question that's been totally left on the sidelines by our culture and by our society. So it's really ripe for investigation. It's also particularly important for me because personally, my hopes for our species and the evolution of consciousness involve a lot of people working together and doing really difficult things for a long time. And that's, I don't think that's going to happen unless that working together is really in line with someone's idea of their own purpose, because otherwise, why would they? Basically, I think people only do difficult things when they have an intrinsic motivation to do so, especially when you have to do that difficult thing over and over and over again for a lot of time, for your life. And so here, one example, yesterday a friend took me surfing, which is nothing I'm not good at, but I'm enjoying exploring. And so I'm in there in the water with the surfboard, and the idea is to be on the surfboard, have the surfboard turned towards the ocean, you see a wave come, and then you're like, doing this little paddle thing to get the surfboard to flip around, and then paddling really hard in a really thick wetsuit. So, I mean, my arms are kind of gimpy anyways, but once you're doing this paddling thing in a thick wetsuit, you're like, geez, do I even have arms? Have I ever paddled before? How does this even work? And then this wave comes and it starts to catch you, but because I'm not great at paddling, it actually passes by and I don't catch the wave. I'm like, this is really not great. It's not what's supposed to happen. So then, this is really getting back to purpose and difficulty, I promise. Then I'm like, you know what I can do? I can just go in a little bit. The waves are not nearly as big, but I can stand because the beach is shallow at that point. I won't have to swim. I won't have to do any of this paddling stuff. And I'll just jump on the surfboard exactly at the right time, and the wave will carry me, and then I'll get to practice all the other parts of surfing, which are also incredibly difficult, like balancing, and standing up, and turning, and all this other stuff. So that's what I did the whole day, and it was amazing, and I had the best surf day of my life. But I did not do any paddling because the paddling is just like difficult, and where's the reward? Another way to think about this is like really intelligent, highly evolved animals were into conservation of energy because you need energy for all sorts of tasks. It makes me think of Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and I don't know how many of you have read that, but if you haven't, it is totally awesome and gives you a ton of little tricks and mental models for how to understand why you're being so mentally lazy and why we're making all these guesses and assumptions instead of thinking things through, and how that's evolutionarily appropriate even. Okay, so here's a really concrete example. I'm going to read you something from somebody whose perseverance and sense of purpose led to compound consistency over a long time and eventual success. And that person is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., well referred to as Uncle Martin. I got this little book here. Friend Eric sent me in the mail, letter from Birmingham jail. And there's another little essay, sermon in there called The Three Dimensions of the Complete Life. I'd love to read the whole thing, but I'm not going to right now. But I just want to read a little part that's about Martin Luther King, Uncle Martin, his relationship to his concept of the divine, which is linked to his concept of purpose, and then to see what I could rescue from that. So, as I come to my conclusion this morning, I want to say that we should search for him. We were made for God, and we will be restless until we rest in him. And I say to you this morning that this is the personal faith that has kept me going. I'm not worried about the future. You know, even on this race question, I'm not worried. I sat down in Alabama the other day and I started thinking about the state of Alabama, where we work so hard and may continue to elect the Wallaces. And down in my home state of Georgia, we have another sick governor by the name of Lester Maddox. And all these things can get you confused, but they don't worry me. Because the God that I worship is a God that has a way of saying, even to kings and even to governors, be still and know that I am God. And God has not yet turned over this universe to these governors. Somewhere I read, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and I am going on because I have faith in him. I do not know what the future holds, but I do know who holds the future. And if he'll guide us and hold our hand, we'll go on in. So I don't know how that sits with you, but there's a paradox in there that I love and I hate. It's a paradox. But I want to be like Uncle Martin. I want to be that effective and do that much good in the world. I think many of you do too. But I don't have that, any kind of religious vocabulary or that kind of faith. And to me, the whole talk about God, I imagine like the old dude with the beard. It's all a fairy tale. And I love fairy tales. And I find them very meaningful and very inspiring. But I don't have anywhere near the kind of belief. I could never say what he just said about anything. So like putting aside his creed or what he believes, I just don't believe in anything that much that I could say. And I think that is I think that's a problem. And so in order to have this sense of purpose, there's a gap there. And I'm not saying that Uncle Martin was simple or that he believed in fairy tales, or I mean, he's a very educated man, his doctorate in theology. He knows that the way he was raised is just one of many different ways of thinking about the world. But there's something he understands. There's something around the topology of faith that he really understands that allowed him to just totally change the world and be a huge part of changing society. That if we all could figure out what that is, even from our secular, atheist, non-traditional backgrounds, that to me is the integration of this like rational way of seeing the world and understanding all the different stories and their value, but not having lost this sense of motivation and purpose and magic and mystery that clearly he still had. Okay, so if you're with me at this point, you're like, great, Uncle Martin, we all want to be here. Wonderful. So if you're with me at this point, you might be like, oh yeah, great, Uncle Martin, we love him, we all want to be like him. But what really do you mean by purpose? So I think that's the next step here, is to define what I mean by purpose. And it's really what my experience of feeling purpose is. Because in our culture right now, I don't think we have a shared vocabulary around purpose. And so this is an attempt to create it. So what I mean by purpose, what I mean by the feeling of like, oh, I'm living in my purpose, it relates to something that I call the play of significance. And the play of significance is when I feel like the actions I'm doing matter, that they're significant in the context of this theater that we're all engaged in. So at the same time, again, it's this paradox. There's this sense that like, yeah, what I'm doing matters. It's an important part. But I can't not acknowledge what in Sanskrit is called lila, like the divine play. The fact that this is all, like Shakespeare would say, it's all the world's a stage. It's this giant carnival and we're all playing our roles. And we're just here for like this blip and then we're gone. But it's important to play our roles well. And so for me, that play of significance, it's really around meaning and connection. And the sense is that like, I'm doing something important. I'm a small part, something greater than myself that is important, and that I can feel connected to that mission, and that there's other people, or maybe other non-people beings, non-human beings, that also feel the connection to that mission, and we connect to each other through that. So it's not just that I get their praise or their adulation, although that can happen. Sometimes that's nice, but sometimes that's a trap. It's really more like I am connected to them through this shared mission. So it's a real interplay between meaning and connection. The meaning comes in part from the connection, and the connection comes in part from the shared meaning. And in order for me to really feel that play of significance, that little cocktail of meaning and connection that I like so well, it's really helpful for me to do something that is uniquely me. And so one way of thinking about this is like, yeah, we're all playing the same game. Maybe the game is the evolution of consciousness. Maybe the game is to be more loving. Everyone has their own way of expressing it. But we're all interchangeable cogs in the machine. It's really difficult for me, and I would wager for many other people, to feel a sense of purpose like that. But if my role in this was dependent on how I express myself, that's my own individual creativity and how I contribute, then it's really important for me to be me. And for all the other people to achieve their ends, because we have the same ends, they need me to be me. And so that is a real part of it. It's like not only the sense of meaning and connection, but really like, wow, okay, I am in my creativity here. I am able to be myself and to be the most onk. And that feels really purposeful. Or when I'm trying to contribute in a way that is not really me, it feels like a drag. Which is not to say we shouldn't do it. I mean, sometimes everyone has to take out the garbage or do a job and work up to another thing. But the sense of purpose comes from expressing ourselves and our individuality, no matter what it is we're doing. And finally, the last characteristic of purpose. So we have meaning, connection, and creativity. The last characteristic for me is joy. This spontaneous upwelling of positive vibrations, literally in the body, like literally having like good body feel, like you would if you had a body buzz from drinking or having an edible marijuana candy or something. Just this feeling of ease and goodness and an inexplicably good mood. That to me is a really common characteristic of like, oh, I'm definitely living in my purpose right now. So joy, creativity, connection, and meaning. To me, these are the hallmarks of purpose. And so it's not just like this theoretical thing of, oh, I want to be living my purpose. You can actually, or I can measure in any given moment or day the quality of my experience and be like, do these signifiers of purpose obtain or do they not? And to bring this back to society as a whole, my claim is that if we each align ourselves with this play of significance, with the joy, with the creativity, with the meaning, the connection, the result of that is going to be a collaborative evolution of consciousness and everybody's experience here. And that's the way forward. So what that looks like in practice is our actions. We could call it something like a career if we want to be crass, but I really think of it as a calling, as a vocation. What is the calling that allows us to be in our joy, in our creativity, and find meaning and feel connection through this play of significance? So that then becomes the question, how do I find my purpose? How do I achieve this play of significance? How do I feel joy? How do I feel creativity? How do I feel connection? How do I feel meaning? And that's a little bit more of a specific lens on the question rather than just like, oh my God, what's my purpose kind of thing. So now that we're all on the same page, we have this shared vocabulary, let's make it happen. And the basic method or approach that I would have for that is, okay, now that we know what purpose is, where in my life so far have I felt this sense of purpose? And actually, even if you don't agree with my definition, the question is still great. As long as you have your own definition that's precise and testable, all you have to do is be like, all right, if this is what purpose means to me, where have I felt it before? And then there's this like lovely assignment type thing where you can write down a list of all the things that correspond to that feeling of purpose in your life. And they might be this week or last year or when you were a kid, because it hasn't happened for so long. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is to like write down the whole list of things. And then if you want to live more in your purpose, run experiments doing more of those things. So doing them more often, trying to figure out with more precision, okay, is it reading in general that gives me this sense? Or is it reading about certain topics? Or is it reading and then writing? Or is it reading and then sharing? Or is it having a book club? Or whatever the thing is, to get more and more specific with it. If it's really, is it just cooking? Is cooking always doing it? Or is it cooking for certain people at certain times or under certain conditions of stress or non-stress or time or non-time? The larger idea actually is to liberate ourselves from theory, in this case, the theory of our beliefs, and enter into the data, the experience of our life. Because we might have beliefs like, I'm not good at X, or I'm only good at Y, or I can never make money, or I can't focus, or I can never see things through, or I'll never be happy in this situation, which are beliefs, and we may have acquired those beliefs for good reasons or bad reasons, or those reasons may no longer be true. But the evidence, the actual reality, is what makes me feel joy and creativity and meaning and connection. And we can use that to just sidestep these beliefs entirely and figure out actually what it is that's going to make us happy. Of course, maybe you asked that initial question, what has led to this sense of purpose in my life? Where have I felt this? And nothing comes up, which totally makes sense. I mean, we live in a post-meaning world. You may have no intrinsic motivation or sense of joy. Maybe all the joy you felt in your life is extrinsic, satisfying other people's demands or making other people happy or internalizing what other people think. And there's no need that you felt this before. I make no assumptions. People come in all different stripes and histories. Fine. But it's the same point. It's the same experimental mindset. Whether you've experienced that sense of purpose, however, it's whether you the way you define it, the way I define it, or not, the idea is then just to make a bunch of random guesses based on your life experience and what you've known about yourself as to how you might experience more of it. And that's it. And then just start running experiments. So in either case, the idea is like, get the best data you have, given what you lived, make a list of things you might want to try to get closer to that sense of purpose, run the experiment, and learn from it. And again, it's this whole experimental scientific mindset that there's no bad experimental result. There's just a well-conducted experiment or a poorly conducted experiment. And either way, you're going to learn that like, oh, okay, maybe pumping gas is really what I want to do. I want to be part of this dying petroleum economy, and I like those fumes. I'll try it out. And then you do it for a month or a week or whatever the commitment is. And then you're like, you know what? I didn't like that. And you've learned something. And it's not like, oh, I just wasted a week of my life pumping gas. It's really, what do I know about myself as a result of this experiment? Purpose. That's what the show is about. Not porpoises, though I do love dolphins, but purpose. Here we are. It's a community of purpose. And so, as I mentioned before, but I'm going to mention it again because that's how these things work. There's two things I'm trying to do. One is to investigate through little thought pieces like this on what we could do to align ourselves with our sense of internal happiness and joy and purpose and meaning, contribution. And the other is to have some interviews with people who have done this process or done their own process and come out the other side. Maybe totally happy, maybe not, maybe with a sense of purpose, maybe it's been shattered, maybe it's come and maybe it's gone. But I want to meet the people in your lives who you really feel embody that. The people who have inspired you, who are the most heroic, your role models, people like, oh my God, I want everybody to meet this person because they've influenced my life in this way. And so that's the invitation, is to call me or respond and be like, Ankh, you have to interview this person. Or if you don't, you're like, I don't have anyone inspiring in my life. I mean, really? If that's true, I want to hear about it, but I doubt it. I bet each of you has someone who's just like, oh, that person everybody on the show needs to hear and needs to meet. So please, put them in touch with me. That's the assignment. I'm going to roll a little tape here of some questions that I recorded for exactly, even more precisely what I'm looking for, who I want to interview, why, and what questions I'm going to ask them. And as you listen to it, think of someone who would satisfy that and who you'd love to see on the show doing that. And then after you listen to it, let them know and let me know. All right, I'll roll that section and I'll peace out. Thanks. Hey, I'm Ankur, and if you're seeing this, it's probably because somebody nominated you to be interviewed on our show, the 10,000 Heroes Show. So I just want to give you a little background on why that might have happened and what I might expect, or what you might expect, if we were to do this interview together. So the reason you were probably suggested is because you were considered to be the most inspiring or purposeful person that somebody knows. Maybe it's me, maybe it's somebody who listens to the show. Maybe we met in an elevator, or you met somebody else in an elevator and they were just like, whoa, this person is amazing. And so I just wanted to define a little bit what I mean by purpose, and it may not be what you understand by it. We don't have to agree. We could get into that in the show or not. It may not be relevant, but I just want to give you a little bit of background. So for me, when I say purpose, it is a non-mystical idea, but there is a little bit of mystery into it. So there's this paradox that I'm holding, that purpose is both empirical, it's demystified, it's something that we come to understand through living and through looking at the evidence of our values and our life and our choices and what makes us happy and what doesn't. So it's something that I think someone in their 30s or 40s might understand way better than someone who's younger, because they haven't had as much experience. And it's not something, at least in my experience with the people that I work with, that comes from a divine inspiration of like, this is what you're here to do. Although sometimes people do get those messages and it's nice, but can't expect them. It's more like, oh, I tried this and I realized this little hint of, oh, this is better. And it's this iterative process until we get to a place of really feeling purposeful. So again, what I mean by purposeful, I break it down into 4 qualities that are kind of, I would call the symptoms of a purposeful life. And they are joy, energy, meaning, and connection. So a sense of joy going through life. Energy, that when you're doing this thing, you have more energy instead of less. It's not life-sucking or soul-sucking, but it's like, wow, at the end of the day, that was amazing. I want to do more, even though it might be, of course, tiring. Connection and meaning. So meaning is really like feeling that part of our higher self is being actualized, and it's really important. Like the work we're doing has a thread. And the connection, it not only does it have a thread for us, but it connects us to other beings. Could be people in our family, could be other humans, could be non-humans, could be rocks. It doesn't really matter. But that's how I kind of think of it. Like, you're living purposefully or more purposefully, because it's not binary, when there's more joy, more energy, more meaning, or more connection. So that's why you're here. Hopefully you're down to have this conversation. And what you might expect, I want to have this format, because I'm not great at formats. I'm a really improvisational guy, but I want to have 3 questions that come off in every interview. And the first is, why are you here? And that question is meant to elucidate a sense of purpose from you and a statement of purpose. And I would love for that to not include any hedging or any, well, at the moment I think, or it's always changing, because those things are true. At the moment, it is what you think. It is always changing. But I think it'd be a really good example for our listeners and for our culture at large to have someone say, this is what I'm here to do right now. And not have to hedge or defend or worry about other people's impressions of it. Knowing that it's all temporary, that the best of all of our plans are written on the sand at low tide on the beach. So that's the first question, why are you here? And what I mean to ask with that is, like, what is your current sense of purpose? And depending on the answer you give, like, I may have a lot of follow-ups or a little bit, but I don't want something so vague that anybody could relate to it. I'm here to be my best self. I'm here to be a loving person. I mean, we're all here to do that, but you have a thumbprint specific, a really individualized way that you've evolved or learned how to do that. And that's what I want to get at. The second question is then, how did you come to know that? And the purpose of this question is to be of service to the people who are listening, all of whom are somewhere, like myself, in this journey of understanding and clarifying our purpose. And the idea is that we'll all be able to learn from your journey. Maybe it was this really difficult intentional process. Maybe it was this really smooth intentional process. Maybe you got just some sort of like divine vibration when you saw a little baby animal. Everybody is different, and I have no expectations as to what you'll say, but it's an opportunity for you to share a little bit about your process and your history, your childhood, where you came from, your first inklings of it, failures that happen along the way. It's just opens the field for us to talk about whatever we want that relates to your journey. And then the third question is, how can this community of purpose serve you? So that imagine that the people who are listening to this show, imagine there's 10,000 of them, 10,000 people out there as part of this community of purpose. And they're not just listening to the show for entertainment or to pass the time while they're driving or they're doing their dishes, but they're listening because they really want to get to know and understand you. And by this point in the interview, they have a real sense of who you are, what you're here to do, and what it would mean for the rest of us. What does the contribution look like if you were to fully unfurl and live into that vision? And they're so excited about it and impressed and supportive. They're like, wow, I want to be a part of this. In fact, it would fit my sense. It would fit each of these 10,000 people's sense of purpose if they could contribute to your unfurling. It would give them joy, it would give them meaning, it would give them connection, it would give them energy if they could contribute in their own special, unique way, like we each have our own unique way, to your mission. And if that's the case, if you had all of this excitement and all of this benevolence, what would you ask for? What do you need? How could this community serve you? These people who are distributed all over the world and skilled in a wide, diverse array of things, and they care and they have attention and they know you and me. I'm one of them. How can we contribute to your life? So that's the third question. None of these questions are easy. I don't expect anybody, including myself, to have the answers just nailed pat. In fact, that would make a really boring interview. So this could, usually the interviews take around an hour. It could be less, it could be more. I'm really not attached to anything like that. But I want to get real. And I want to get real for myself and have an example of the people listening in our culture at large, what it looks like to get real, what it looks like to share what we care about, and what it looks like to live in alignment with a greater sense of purpose that connects us, and what it took to get there. So that's the invitation. Talk to you soon. If you like this episode, you can join the 10,000 Heroes Club, our own community of purpose, by clicking the link below this video. You'll never miss an episode, you'll have opportunities to nominate the people I interview and the questions I explore. But perhaps most importantly, you'll have an opportunity to share your dreams and your needs in a safe space of mutual intention and trust.